And speaking of good stuff, we'll probably get to some of it after the modern WWE
Yeah,
reviews.
as soon as we get to the good stuff, ladies and gentlemen, we'll let you know.
But before we get to the modern stuff, I sent you a video because I just discovered it. It had been up for a little while, apparently, as part of the Savoldi wrestling catalog, whatever they've acquired or licensed or talk people out of. I don't know what's going on over there.
Okay, well, it's very obscure. Yes, it surprised me too. But go ahead.
But it's footage from seemingly Louisville Wrestling TV, taped in Louisville, I would imagine, or somewhere near there based on some of the things that are said. And it's George Gulas as a commentator with that very unique commentating style, that very unique way of speaking.
That very unique voice where his tongue got in the way of his eye teeth so he couldn't see what he was saying.
But what exactly was it? Because what it is George Gulas asking maybe a dozen, maybe slightly more fans just their very basic thoughts on what's happening, and then they walk off and the next person comes out.
Well,
What was this?
Okay, and first of all, it was on the Savoldi's YouTube channel that they released, and it's a teaser for possibly more things to come because there is more of that episode. I was fortunate enough, I thought I'd mentioned that I'd seen this to you, but I guess I hadn't. Fortunate enough to be included in the inner circle because of it was in Louisville and I was intrigued. And apparently, in a variety of the tapes that they have accrued from various sources, the last, and I'll tell people how it came to be before we get finished with this, but the last Louisville live studio TV wrestling show still existed on one of the old 2-inch tapes, 2-inch videotapes.
Wow.
And it had never been taped over because it was the last one, as far as I know. And when it was picked up it got put on a shelf and it went wherever, right? This thing, it's from 1973. So they'd had it for years, but it was just labeled Gaga and it wasn't high on their, importance list. But the reason why that Louisville had a TV show, it's not exactly for sure or for certain. And of course, bless him, Jerry Jarrett lived this business for almost 50 years. So sometimes his memory was either a little faulty or might have weighed more heavily in the favor of him being right about something. But what had happened is Jarrett's Louisville Wrestling Enterprises that was running Louisville, his mother, Christine, was the promoter of record at the building at the Louisville Gardens. And they had 2 television airings during the, say, spring, summer of 1972 on 2 different stations. One was the Memphis show that Jerry was the booker of and primarily responsible for, but because they got a second airing on another station, instead of airing the same show, Nick did goddamn 5 live studio shows in a weekend: Chattanooga, Huntsville, Birmingham, Nashville at one time. And so they just used one of Nick's shows that also featured some of the same talent. And they had 2 or 3 more interview segments to plug the live matches in Louisville, right? So why not? But for some reason, we've talked about when Phil Golden's All-Star Wrestling and Angelo Poffo was involved and was running the same towns, went to the same TV stations, running the same territory that the Poffo's ICW would run several years later. Phil Golden, his TV ended up on, as I recall, and my book is not in front of me, but Channel 41. No, I'm sorry, I tell a lie. It went the other way. The point is, instead of Channel 32 and Channel 41 both having Jarrett's affiliated wrestling programs, Phil Golden's TV popped up on Channel 32, and Jarrett began doing a live studio show in the WDRB studio in Louisville here at the same time, pretty much. And Jerry remembered it as well. We thought we could recreate the magic of, Memphis with a live studio show in Louisville, which sounds like a great reason to try it, except there was absolutely no fucking way. And they knew that at the time. They would have had to have known it because the way the territory was laid out, you couldn't get the top guys in Louisville on Saturday mornings, which was all the way fucking north of the territory when Memphis TV was the bread and butter, and it was 400 miles away in Saturday mornings. And so,
so George Gulas is on this tape. Is he the lead commentator on the show?
Yes. Oh, more on that in a minute. Because that was the first thing against him. And they did it for a while. And then they started advertising because they would advertise, this is the only live Louisville wrestling taped or shown from the studios of blah, 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 to counteract Phil Golden's show being from Paducah. And that was a strategy. But then they realized, Saturday, we can't do a decent show on Saturday. So they started taping it in the WDRB studio, but on like a Thursday, I think, when the guys had done Louisville and then maybe over to Evansville, or then they'd come back and do that and then shoot off somewhere south on Thursday night, maybe to Nashville. And they'd show it on Saturday. But anyway, point is, after about 9 months, the whole thing went away. Golden's TV went off the fucking local stations. Jarrett, the studio show, that was the end of it. The one that we're talking about. And everything went back to, he would have, a show on a couple of different stations. I think in looking at all those things and just trying to figure it out, that maybe Golden had caused enough of a stir trying to get on that Jarrett had to WDRB, we'll do this show right here with you guys and blah, 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 something like that, or the station wanted it. Or why can't we have, instead of just a tape, whatever. And he was just doing that specifically somehow to counteract Phil Golden, which the show Golden was doing, I got a kick out of it, but it didn't need a lot of counteract.
So, like, for instance, on the clip we're talking about, George Gulas asked some of the fans about Lawler, White, and Bass. Were they there? Were they in the studio for any of these shows?
No, that's the thing. They weren't in the studio on that show. Now, they had been there every once in a while, but more important, they needed to, especially when they went to the taped version. But it was a low energy, small crowd, but low energy show because they had to stretch everything out because there wasn't a full group of guys, no matter who was on it. And they were tired. They're especially when they're stopping by on a Thursday or a Friday at one point or whatever in the afternoon to wrestle on the way to somewhere else to wrestle. Right. So it just didn't have the oomph. And also, did I mention George Gulas? You did, was the announcer. Because that was Nick's, influence. Well, we'll send George. And I think Lynn Rossy was on the other part of this program.
Yeah, he's at the desk too, yeah.
Because Lynn did, there's films that exist from Nashville, from the Gulas in Nashville, Birmingham, Chattanooga, from the mid-70s, of Lynn just doing the commentary on the match in the arena with the film camera, just by himself, just on a microphone. And bless him, great wrestler, wonderful human being. He was not an announcer, but he had been Nick's booker for so many years that Nick just said, well, Lynn, you go out there and tell them, what they're supposed to think about this thing. You see what I'm saying?
Career ended short, obviously.
Yes, he had a car accident, and fucked up his ankle so badly that in 1972 he would still have been wrestling at least another 10 years. I can't remember how old he was, but he was in great shape. But yeah, so that's the thing is, and Lynn's just dry, and it was a dreary show. But I mean, most of Nick's studio shows, once you had seen the Memphis show with a lot of the same guys, but just more energy and everything, most of Nick's shows were a little blasé by 75. Nevertheless, the reason why also this was the last one, and I knew it was going to be the last one done in the studio there. So I can't remember who's on it now. I've got this information, but you hit me with the question with no notes. But there was like 2 long matches and an interview with Brian. Have you ever heard of Stu Phillips and the Balladeers?
No. Was that the person he mentioned at the end, the Grand Ole Opry singer?
Yes. Because I swear to God, hold on. Wait a minute. I can reach.
Oh, tell me you have the record there.
No, hold on. Oh, God damn it. I got to get off the headphones.
Gripping
hold
tightly.
on. Just play your organ.
Are you back yet?
Stop playing your organ.
I guess you're back.
Hold on here. I'll tell you exactly what was going on. I just got my book. Brian. And what it was, the date was, hold on, the date of that telecast it would have been on Saturday, or were they on Saturday? Yes, it would have been Saturday, May the 5th of 1973. And they were promoting the matches in Louisville for May the 8th, and it was special attraction. Stu Phillips and the Balladeers, Grand Ole Opry star and TV personality, will perform at intermission. And they had Stu Phillips in the studio. And he talked for like 5 fucking minutes. This was the worst TV show. Oh my God. But for me to see it again and to not ever known it existed, and then to have seen it again after 50 years was fucking great. But here was the card. See, this is the thing, the opening match. Terry Garvin and Duke Myers with their manager, Jimmy Garvin, who was 18 years old at that point. It was his first year in the business. Against Don Green and Charlie Cook, Al Costello and Don Kent, the Fabulous Kangaroos, against Bobby Hart and Lorenzo Parenti, who were, and Lorenzo Parenti especially was in and out of the territory for years and years. And they're the third of 3 matches, return 6-man grudge tag team match, Jerry Jarrett, Jackie Fargo, and Tojo Yamamoto against Jerry Lawler, Jim White, and Sam Bass. And with all due respect to the people in the first 2 tag team matches, the fans could have given a shit who was in those matches. They came to see and they'd give a shit about Stu Phillips. And they still, I don't have the figure because I was not there live, but for the averages in those days, they were drawing 3,000 or 4,000 people to see that 6-man tag main event.
What do you make of Stu Phillips? I mean, is that something that's part of like, we're trying to really show the other side what we could do? Or is it someone asked a favor? Hey, could you get him on your show? What is that?
No, because here's the thing. They just won the war. Phil Golden showed, now that I'm looking at this, I'll fill you in. On May the 1st, the advertisement was, watch the only championship studio wrestling produced live in Louisville and shown the following day. So it was Friday, like Friday at noon or whatever, before they headed to fucking Memphis. It's shown the following day exclusively on WDRB TV channel 41, Saturday from 2 to 3 p.m., right? The next week, the ad says, watch All-Star Championship Wrestling returning to WLKY TV channel 32 on Saturday, May the 5th at 11:30 a.m. and WDRB channel 41, Saturday from 2 to 3 p.m. So Golden Show went away. Jarrett had 2 shows again. The studio show ceased to exist. All at the same time. So they couldn't wait to get out of that fucking thing.
Did you know any of the fans that were interviewed? Did you recognize any of them?
No, see, I wasn't going, that was before I was even going to the matches. It might not have been a full year. I'd figured out all this shit was on television. And for a while, I like, can we ask my mom, right? Can we go to the matches? And she said, Jimmy, we're not going downtown after dark or whatever. And then finally I talked her into it. And then she was like, well, Jesus Christ, there's 4,000 people here and it's all lit up. What the fuck? We don't really have to worry about being slaughtered.
So you saw the Phil Golden TV. How did you discover that?
Well, because when I found out about it, that's the thing. Golden had gotten on the air some way after we've gone back and looked at the old ads and etc. in September of 1972. And that's about the time or the summer of whatever that I've found Bruisers TV and then knew to start looking for the thing called wrestling, in the paper. And well, here it became. So, I got probably right before that because I got used to seeing the regular folks and Nick Gulas, who you can't, even as a child, I can't get that voice out of my head doing the fucking local promos. And then all of a sudden, here's Buzz Benson with, Giant Frazier and Sweet Daddy Watts they were the world's largest tag team because Frazier was 425 and Sweet Daddy Watts was like 400 pounds, but he was only like 5'6". So it was an amusing contrast.
And that was Gorilla Watts.
Yes.
For Gunkel. Yeah.
So
up against Cowboy Bill Watts as a booker, they all of a sudden booked this guy as Gorilla Watts.
Yes, and it was complimentary. It was a shade beyond uncomplimentary. But anyway, point is, so all this, it was happening. So I was able to see these 2 shows, but at the same time, and I remember Golden's being on Saturday nights because if I was, after 11 o'clock, I'm watching TV every once in a while, I get my mom to fix pancakes where I could have pancakes and watch the Von Brauners and Saul Weingeroff talk bad about Frazier and Sweet Daddy Watts. And the best for the Sweet Daddy Watts, obviously, I guess people don't even remember, much less take this for granted, but he had a pronounced stutter and they let him do promos. And between Frazier, between the folksy neighbor, promo that he did, and then Sweet Daddy Watts would just try to thank the audience for their support, and it would literally be like somebody firing a machine gun of blah, 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 well, thank you. And that's all he'd say sometimes. Or he'd get mad and it was even worse. It was just, it was local television. What can I say?
How shocked are you this tape exists?
Oh, well, and again, I was very shocked because I wouldn't ever have dreamed but what they were doing, because I watched Teeny, Miss Jarrett do it years later, the same thing, with different station. Every week when they came to Louisville, they would drop the tape of the next week's TV show at the TV station personally and pick up last week's, take it back to be taped over. And that's why I say the reason why I think is because this was the very last one. It was picked up and taken back, but not taped over to send back because they were sending a tape from another station to blah, blah, blah. And so that's how somehow it might have ended up sitting on a shelf.
Is it unreasonable to think there may be more episodes from that run that weren't taped over?
That's the problem is, especially the way these things might have been labeled. I don't know that Savoldi has any more. If not, maybe he's holding out on me, but they could be floating around anywhere. One time, I swear to God, Frazier was the king of discount shoes and clothing and flea market and swap meet type of sales. I've heard a story that he helped him clean out the office at one point in the late 70s and took a bunch of the tapes over to the flea market and sold them for blank tapes. And I mean, there's all shit. It just, who knows? But this is, it's an interesting artifact because it's the last show is for all the reasons I talked about, and it preserves George and the way that he spoke. And can you imagine within a year, Nick had stuck him in the ring?
That's what I was going to ask you. When did he start wrestling?
About a year later, after Nick had made him an announcer, not only of the, I think he may have started on the Louisville show. I think that may have been where because they had other, at least experienced announcers in Chattanooga, Harry Thornton, and Birmingham was Sterling Brewer. And so Mike Duncan had done Nashville. So he probably said, well, give George a chance to do the show in Louisville. And they didn't need him anywhere else. So there it was, right? And then he made him a special referee. I can't remember the date, but when he became a special referee, his name was in bigger print than the goddamn people in the main event. Special NWA referee George Gulas, and it'd be like Luthez versus Buddy Rogers.
Was it already George? Was it already George Gulas?
Oh yeah, except the first round of publicity pictures where Nick had pictures of George taken with every baby face in the territory. And then they had all kinds of them made up. And it would say, George Nick Gulas with so-and-so. And he was using George Nick Gulas because Nick, I guess, I mean, that's his legal fucking name. But I think Nick thought that it would get him over even more if they absolutely were certain.
Oh my God.
That George was his son. Because he's been on TV for 40 years here, right?
I mean, that's the thing. I don't know what Nick Gulas' accent is exactly, and I've seen footage of him much later in life, but I've heard you do this for years. But then you hear George, and it's like, okay, it's kind of like his dad, but there's a whole nother thing. Like, it's hard to figure out why they're talking like that.
Well, you see here, let me tell you this, boy. You see here, the Gulas family was Greek. You probably know more Greek people than I do living in the Northeast. It doesn't, but also I don't want to say impediment of speech, but just whatever. And the pattern and the staccato nature sometimes. And then George took all of that Nick had and emits it through his nose. So you've got that extra component of meh. And it was, but yeah, a TV announcer, then babyface special NWA referee, and he was in the ring months after that.
That footage, and you know it so much better than me, the Luke Graham match where George Gulas makes the save?
Yes.
I think it was Nashville, but maybe you'll tell me I'm wrong, but when was that?
That is probably... I'm going to say 1970, and it could be one of these deals. Oh gosh, it was December 74, but I'm going to say some point in 1975, just off the top of my head. And that's, he's been wrestling for a year, maybe. But he had the NWA title match with Harley in 78. And this TV that we're talking about where he's still an announcer is May of 73.
I should probably know this. And it may just be Scott Teal. I know I have it in the archive. Who took the famous photo of Jackie Fargo, Tojo Yamamoto, Jerry Jarrett, and George Gulas?
Oh, the color one?
Yeah, the color one of them in the locker room, and George has the biggest smile on his face ever.
Yes, yeah. Yes, and they've all got their jackets on and everything. Yeah. Yes, I'm pretty sure that's a Mike Shields.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
If Scott hears this and it is his, then I apologize. But from what that I'm thinking, from everything that they were doing, and this was color and it was sold in the Louisville Inn, I'm thinking maybe they did it in Memphis or at some point like that. I don't know, but it's either Mike Shields or Scott Teal. One would think.
All right.
But and also George interviewing the fans is because they fucking ran short. They had nobody left. They fucking, what else are we going to do here? Oh, well, who do you think is going to win? And it was just, and you could tell George had no personality, was awkward with people. And these people stumbled in there on a Friday afternoon and they've seen 2 matches and heard a dissertation from Stu Phillips. And then here's this fucking beanpole with a speech impediment asking them your questions. And some of those people had played hooky from school. So now they're on fucking tape.
I like the guy who was like kind of pissed off. He's like, the referee's blind.
Yeah. Well, somebody had to say it. God damn it. I'm not scared like these children.
Yeah. Well, this has been Local Wrestling Talk.